Whenever people ask me, how did you meet Christ? I always truthfully have to answer, I didn't seek him, he sought me. I was the dutiful Muslim daughter of Iranian parents. We lived in Geneva, Switzerland in the 1950s, and we stuck out a mile in our apartment block as Middle Eastern foreigners. My parents were observant Shia Muslims, but they were also broad-minded, and they believed that the Christian church had distorted Christ's message by adding practices and trivia to its original worship and doctrines. I was taught to take pride in the fact that I belonged to Islam, and Islam was the last of God's Abrahamic faiths, and as such, it was God's most perfect vision for mankind. And it was also drummed into me to take pride in my Persian heritage, culture, and Persian roots. So, throughout my childhood, I really believed in the superiority of being both a Muslim and Iranian. Now, into this mix stepped Jesus Christ, and this is how it came about. I still marvel at it. One day, when I was just about 8 or 9 years old, I strayed into a Catholic church near our house. I had been forbidden to go there, but I disobeyed and went in. And while I was there, I was struck by the atmosphere within the church. I was taken by the flickering of the candles, the quiet darkness, the incense-laden atmosphere, the Latin chants, and the beautiful carved Stations of the Cross. And above all, over the high altar hung an enormous cross on which there was the suffering Christ with a face that was both gentle and kind. The experience was really like an epiphany for me at that age. I was so taken with it, and I didn't really understand it. It tugged at my heartstrings physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And although I didn't understand it, I knew instinctively that I would follow. It was something that meant a great deal to me. And I think Christ knew how much the aesthetics would influence me. And even now, half a century later, I still am amazed that Christ chose to call to himself a naughty Muslim girl who had strayed into a Roman Catholic temple in the heart of a city that prides itself as being the center of Protestantism and the seat of Calvinism. Obviously, God knows no man-made boundaries. Much later, as an overseas student at an English university, I was able to study the Gospels in depth, as well as church history and theology. These were part of my doctoral researches, but I was also seeking a very personal relationship with God, which somehow I was unable to get through Islam. This led me to a much deeper understanding of Christianity and also accepting its doctrine of salvation. I began to attend many church services of different denominations regularly, and I was always praying earnestly to find that salvation through Christ and to be able to somehow justify my conversion from Islam. During these student years, also as part of my studies, I spent a month in a Catholic convent with an order of nuns. They were the Sisters of the Cross and Passion in Leeds, and I was accepted there as a visiting member of the community. I also spent several months with the Jesuit fathers in their house of studies in North Wales, where I underwent and did the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius under the leadership and direction of one of the Jesuit priests. In all these places, I was accepted as an inquirer of good faith. I was also welcomed without hesitation as a child of God. This welcome and this generous hospitality and innate kindness, especially of the university's Methodist chaplaincy and the many ordinary Christian parishioners, was freely extended to me and given without any pressure for me to convert. These people accepted me just as I was, simply because Christ would also have done so. It really was a powerful message. Throughout this decade, and also after I had returned to Iran, I prayed long and earnestly for a solution to the dilemma of knowing that I really was a Christian at heart, but the feeling that I could not declare it. I was hesitant, really because of my filial duty to my parents, and also by the feeling that I had deep-seated questions about heritage and identity which were caught up within Islam. I wrestled massively with the ramifications of all these issues. But at last, just a few months before the Islamic Revolution, I awoke one morning and knew I was ready to take that public step towards baptism. I don't know why I knew suddenly, I just did. The timing of the decision, of course, was God's doing. My baptism would never have taken place if I had waited a little bit longer, because the revolution flung the whole country into turmoil and everything changed for everyone after that. I was baptized in Tehran on the 5th of May 1978, and after 20 years of deliberations, I had accepted Christ's call. He had graciously sought me and had waited patiently, but I was finally his.